Welcome back to Coral Gables Now. October 1st marked the beginning of the city's new fiscal year, and with it came some changes that directly affect you. Rodolfo Roman has that story and more on City News.
Pedestrians will soon be walking on renovated sidewalks thanks to the Bird Road Roadway project. Work is expected to be finished by December. The Florida Department of Transportation project is taking place on Bird Road between Southwest 57th Avenue and Southwest 38th Avenue. It started in January. About 95% of the roadway and 90% of the bridge and shoulder has been widened. Also, sidewalks and pedestrian ramps have been upgraded among the works. In other news, one of Coral Gables' famous parks has opened its doors just in time for the great South Florida weather. Salvador Park is up and running. A renovation project shut down the park earlier this year. The work included renovating the bathrooms, repairing the racquetball courts, and replacing the playground structures. The project cost about $170,000 and will be funded by the Miami-Dade County Building Better Communities General Obligation Bond. Next time you park next to a street parking meter in Coral Gables, you'll have to pay until midnight, including Sundays. That is a 2-hour extension from existing Monday through Saturday 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. Parking enforcement is also in effect on Sundays from 9 a.m. until midnight. The extended hours will affect approximately 4,000 parking meters citywide, with a current hourly rate of $1.25 for short-term street parking, which will not change. Regardless, the city will have one of the lowered meter rates compared to other municipalities.
Thanks, Rodolfo. And changing topics now, there is no city that's immune to the foreclosure crisis, and Coral Gables is unfortunately no different. There are several properties in the city that are in foreclosure, which makes some very good deals for those trying to break into the Coral Gables market. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Luckily, Gary Opper, managing member of Gary Opper LLC, is here to explain the sometimes confusing process of buying a foreclosure property. Gary, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, David.
You're going to have your own segment soon on this show.
I know. Well, Belky's are going to come back.
Yeah. So, first off, how do you prepare for a purchase of a foreclosure? It's different, right?
It's different. You have to do your homework. You know, you have to go out. You have to find out where properties are that are appreciating. You have to figure out where the properties are that aren't appreciating, and figure out what neighborhoods you want to be in. You want to figure out, you know, where you want to be in the marketplace. You have to figure out price-wise where the break is. You have to figure out, you know, do you want to buy at a pre-foreclosure or short sale? Do you want to buy at the auction, you know, at a foreclosure auction, or do you want to go to, say, auction.com and buy off of that, or do you want to buy post-foreclosure and buy an REO? So you have to figure out that. You have to figure out your money. How much money do you have? You have to find a good real estate attorney, a good real estate agent. You know, there's a lot of homework that you need to do, but if you do, obviously there are rewards,
of course,
down the road.
And what are some of the risks? Because even though you may do your homework and you may think you have everything set, but that's not how it works.
Things never work out the way they're planned, especially in foreclosures. Some of the risks that are involved, obviously, are that you may buy a property and think that you have $5,000 repairs, and all of a sudden you find out there's mold in the house. You might have to do remediation. You know, you may find out that the $5,000 now has become $25,000. So there's risk involved when you buy properties that aren't being maintained. Inside the properties themselves, there's also the risk of, say, title issues. You know, there may be, for instance, the city of Coral Gables may have put a lien on the property, or may have charged a fine that for some reason you don't find out until after you close, even with a good title search. So those are things that you have to watch out for. You also, if you buy property and the tenants or the owners are still in the property, you have to somehow get them out of the property, which they may not necessarily want to leave as timely as you like for them to be, and they could possibly do damage to the property. So you know, there's a multitude of risk, and obviously what you want to do is try to minimize the risk that you get involved with.
Of course. So like you said, it never really works out. So you just got to be as prepared as possible, basically. Yes. And is it mandatory to give the 20% down with the down payment?
Well, it all depends. I mean, if you go for traditional financing, they're going to want the 20% down. There's other types. There's alternative financing. There's private lenders. You may even be able to go to the bank and have them work out something, in which case you may not have to put down the 20%. On the other end, if you're an investor and let's say your credit's not the best in the world, you may wind up having to put down between 40 and 60%.
Jeez, that's so it's going to be a lot of numbers to deal with, a lot of number crunching that you're going to have to.
You have
really
to
deal with.
again. You have to do your homework. You have to know how much money you have and know how much you want to risk, and you also have to always have money in reserve in case it balloons out. And you also have money in reserve. You know, you should have 6 months of cash in reserve to carry yourself in case something happens.
Of course.
So you have to look out for yourself personally first, and then also, you know, protect the property. So
Of course.
to speak.
Number one rule of Monopoly, the board game: always have money left over. What are some of the common mistakes that people do when it comes to buying foreclosures?
Well, again, the common mistakes are people go into foreclosures and think they're going to make $1 million overnight. You have to do your homework. You have to know the market. You have to understand the market. You know, if you spend 10 hours a day for, 10 weeks, you're going to know the product. So you want to be able to do that.
So what are some of the things you should avoid? Because it's a very complicated process and it takes a lot of work. So this isn't just, for people that are just thinking that they're, like you said, they're just going to make $1 million very easily. So what are some of the things they should avoid?
Well, if you don't have the disposition to actually be involved in real estate and actually manage it, because it's very labor intensive and very active management as opposed to passive, then you may want to avoid it altogether. You also want to avoid certain neighborhoods if you see that a neighborhood's, and again, you have to do your homework, and if you see that a neighborhood is depreciating in value, you need to stay away from that neighborhood. You want to find neighborhoods that are appreciating in value. You want to avoid certain areas. You may want to avoid certain range price of homes. You want to see what's actually appreciating property. If you're not the type of person that's deals with evicting people, then you want to avoid dealing with properties that have either tenants or homeowners in the property.
And recently in the news, just to, add on to everything else going on with the economy, now banks are freezing mortgages. What's going on there?
Well, from what I understand, there's 3 banks, and I guess by now there should be more banks. And what they have is there's an affidavit you have to sign stating what all the costs are, what the principal balance of the mortgage is, and coming to a total, which is eventually become a judgment amount. And in that affidavit of proof, it says that this person who's signing has personal knowledge of the figures. And from what I understand, if someone's in a room signing 1,000 a day, it's difficult for them to have personal knowledge of the loans. And one of the things that's required is that they have personal knowledge of the information on the affidavit. So it's a defective affidavit, which obviously now there's a question as to how do you proceed with all these foreclosures. On the other hand, these banks, the people who own these properties, aren't paying their loans. So they're still not paying their loans. It's just a defect. It's a technical defect in the process, and it could go anywhere from a slap on the wrist to they might have to entirely refile every one of these foreclosures. And the bad thing, obviously, for us is that it's going to take longer for us to get out of this foreclosure mess.
Of course.
Longer for us to get responsible people living in the properties, people who are going to have pride of ownership. So the city of Coral Gables doesn't have to issue citations. They don't have to go around and see which properties aren't being maintained and whatever. But it will just obviously slow down the whole process of getting out of the recession that we're in.
And do you think, just from all this stuff now, that let's say we're driving down the street, you're going to start seeing a lot more foreclosure signs on houses?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think if the banks have to slow it down, there's going to be less foreclosures on the market, which may, overall, the foreclosures have to work through. And obviously there's a supply and demand, and if you have a large supply of homes on the property, it's going to drive prices of homes down. Right now, it may make home prices go up slightly, because obviously the supply will slow down, because these loans now are all tied up in the foreclosure process.
Right.
So what's on the market now may actually rise in value slightly.
Very cool. And next month, you have another topic you're going to bring us. What are we going to be talking about next month?
We're going to talk about mortgage scams. We're going to talk about
Mortgage
how to avoid becoming part of a mortgage scam, how to avoid using your credit, ruining your credit because of some transaction that somebody's trying to scam you with.
Okay, so everyone get ready for your mortgage scams, but make sure to take note of your foreclosure notes this episode. Gary, thank you again for coming out and always coming out and giving us great information. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
And we still have a lot more coming up here on Coral Gables Now. Did you know that the fire department is offering parents training on a very important piece of equipment, their child's car seat? And get ready, because our cameras were there for the museum's opening when it opened its door for the first time. Don't go anywhere. have a whole lot of Coral Gables coming up right when we get back.
Happy Thanksgiving to my family and to everybody in Coral Gables.
Hi, happy Thanksgiving to all my family and friends. I love you guys.